Hey guys, welcome to the Field of 68 YouTube channel. If you like what you see here, hit that subscribe button and you'll get more college basketball content just like this. Have to head down to Auburn. We have to head down to Alabama. We have to head down to RC. I'm just going to call it, man, the ass kicking of the night. Auburn 101, South Carolina 61. What happened?
Burn the tape. Like burn the tape. You don't even discuss this anymore. Burn the tape. You don't 40 points, man. They came out and after the first TV timeout, I don't even recognize South Carolina after that's one of those. I know Coach Paris is gonna be pissed about the tape with his guys, but burn the tape, man. You got nothing out of that. That game was over fast. I mean, you didn't even need to watch the second half. Gave up 101 points. They lost by a legit 40. It got worse in the second half, man. I just burn the tape. Like it ain't nothing to talk about with this one. This was just like you said in the intro. It was an ass kick.
Sweeney, how good is Auburn in your mind?
Look, I think the highs for Auburn are really, really high. I think I'd go as far to say, right, like if Auburn went on a 6-game rampage through the NCAA tournament, somewhat similar to what UConn did last year and dominated, I think I would look back and be like, why didn't I see that coming, right? Because when they've been really good, they've looked just as good as UConn, just as good as Purdue, just as good as any team in college basketball. It's just a consistency thing for them. And maybe they turn the corner and maybe they do truly break through. But, I think the thing with this Auburn team is you have nights like this where they look unbeatable, where their bigs are making plays inside and out, when their guard play is tremendous, when the shooting is great, the defensive intensity is unbelievable. And then you have nights like Saturday where they laid an egg against Florida, like just flat out did not show up. We're not competitive. Trailed by I think 27 in the second half, right? Like that's the Auburn experience this year. And I've always believed that there is a title level team in there. We saw it tonight. The question is, can we see it consistently across 2 to 3 weeks in March to make that run to a Final Four title?
Yeah, RC, to me, it's can we see it when they are not playing in front of the
No.
madhouse that Bruce Pearl has developed in Auburn Arena. They lost at Florida, they lost at Mississippi State, they lost at Alabama, they lost at Appalachian State, they lost to Baylor on a neutral floor. That's my big question with this Auburn team is what happens when they are not playing in front of the crowd that is able to give them a certain level of energy that you don't see in most places.
I mean, it's fair to say that. I mean, everybody struggles on the road. I think. I mean, most teams would prefer to play at home, so I don't penalize them for that. I do think the pendulum has swung from last game to this game. I mean, you're talking about getting blown out by a Florida team and then coming out tonight and just hammering South Carolina tonight. And you can expect that after a loss like that. I didn't expect this type of performance. I did expect them to play well at home. The one advantage they do have that I think that stands out that's different from certain teams, depending on their matchup in the tournament, is they got depth, man, and they're going to be able to rotate, guys in there. That if you're a team that, particularly on that second game of the weekend, if you're a team with a short bench, that turnaround helps them. So just like everybody else, before we get that far ahead, I think they're the team, and I know we'll talk about this. I think they have the easiest road to finish the season and win the regular season title among all the other teams. I know it's kind of, a bunch of teams fighting at the top with South Carolina and Alabama and Tennessee. But I think if you look at their schedules, I think they have the easiest road to finish. Now, whether they finish it, we'll see. But I think they have the schedule to do so.
Yeah, Sweeney, I want to hit you with this because I think with this Auburn team, we know how good their front line is, right? We know how good Janai Broome is. We know how good Jalen Williams is. I don't know if there are 4 or 5 combinations that you're going to find in college basketball that are better than those two. And then when you throw in Dylan Cardwell coming in off the bench, you throw in guys like Chad Baker-Mazara who can kind of slide up and play that like 3-4 role. I think they have as good of a front line as you're going to find in college basketball. I at least would say they're not going to get overwhelmed by anybody outside of maybe Zach Edey. And Zach Edey would overwhelm everybody in college basketball. He would overwhelm Prime Shaq at this point. I feel like with their guards, I'm a little bit worried about them, but it's different than last year because these guys know who they are and understand their role and understand what they do. I call it KYS, right? Know your scout. Know your own scouting report. Know who you are and what your strengths are. I don't think that was the case last season. I think it is the case this year with their guards. They know that they're not great. They're not Jared Harper. Aiden Holloway is not the guy that we thought he was when they played up at the Pentagon in South Dakota and beat Baylor earlier this year, right? I just that's my biggest takeaway with this Auburn team is their backcourt knows who they are.
Yeah, like I agree with you. I think Trey Donaldson, to me, is the key to this team because he's a point guard, more of a traditional point guard, I think, than Aiden Holloway is, who is more of a scorer when I remember watching him in EYBL. Like, to me, Trey Donaldson's a guy who can come in and run a team, take care of the basketball, make shots, get to the rim, and really defend. I mean, he is a tremendous athlete. Today he was really good, 11 points, 4 assists, no turnovers, 2 steals. Like, that's the type of performance that they need from him regularly. He's been in double figures now 3 of his last 4 games. Like, he's really starting to come along. And to me, when they just get solid point guard play, they have a chance to be as good as anyone in the country because, I mean, you saw what Jalen Williams did tonight at the 4. Obviously, Janai Broome, so special. That front court is so potent that, and then they surround it with shooting as well. So as long as they get solid point guard play, I think they're really good. And Trey Donaldson was more than solid tonight.
Yeah. RC, I'm going to hit you with this. Vaulted is an app that allows you to participate in daily cash prize pools without an entry fee. It is the place that you can store your own predictions forever. And by using the Vaulted Challenge feature, you can prove you're smarter than your friends and your favorite French bulldog named Zeus. We'll talk about that in a little bit, RC. Go ahead and download the Vaulted app, spelled VLTED, to challenge your friends, store your predictions, and join daily cash prize pools without an entry fee. I think this Auburn team can make the Final Four. Randolph. I think that they are that good. I trust their front court. I trust the system, right? I trust the style that they want to play. I trust that defense is going to show up on the majority of nights. No one else, there's nobody in this sport that you can say is going to be there literally every single night, right? And I think Auburn is good enough to be able to show up on 90% of the nights. I think this team is Final Four good. Am I right? Am I wrong? Where do you stand?
I won't argue with that. And I don't think you can. I mean, we've seen them at their high. And when you see them at their high, you think that. I mean, they've seemed to be figuring it out, and that's what you want to do now. I mean, we went through it early on, and like Sweeney just said, I mean, Donaldson seems to be just being solid at the point guard spot. At least he knows what he's getting. But I still think Aiden Holloway allows them his highs, and even Katie Johnson. We've seen him kind of go on rolls. That just the depth or the versatility that they have on their front court and their back court, I think is a scary team with them. So I wouldn't argue it. But again, like you said, the only thing we got to see is more consistency when they're not at home. And in the tournament is neutral sites. They'll play someone that travels really well. But I wouldn't argue against this team. Bruce Pearl does, he's a hell of a coach, and this team is battle tested. So I wouldn't say that you're out with that.
How far? I think everyone can agree on this, and correct me, either of you, if I'm wrong. But Purdue and UConn at this point are the 2 teams that are the standard in college basketball. I don't know if I would call them elite or great or whatever, but they have set themselves apart in a different tier. How far away is Auburn from that group, RC? And Sweeney, you weigh in after.
I would say I would be more comfortable saying Tennessee's in that next group after them. And I think Auburn is starting to put themselves in that conversation. And like I said, with their scheduling, I think they'll be the team that wins.
Why do you think that?
Because I know what their identity is on the defensive end of the floor, and I love their balance of their team. And so you're talking about a front court that we just said, just as solid as there is. So I love the balance of being able – depth matters. And when you get into the tournament, all it takes is – some teams will struggle when one guy doesn't play well. I think what they're asking guys to do is in their identity on the defensive end of the floor and the bodies and the depth that they have. Like, there's not a lot of good teams that have this amount of depth that plays this way, where guys are understanding their role and they're all bought in. And that's unique and it's different. I mean, you're talking about most teams are, as we get this late in the year, most teams are shortening their rotation, not continuing a 10-man, 11-man rotation. And that's just something that I think they'll benefit them, particularly as you get through the tournament.
Sweeney?
Look, I think for me, Purdue and UConn have separated themselves not because they're so elite at their best, but because of how consistent that they've been. Right? Obviously, both those teams have a high gear that they can get into, but the reason they're number 1 and number 2 and it's not close is that they've been consistent. And I think for Auburn, they're one of the few teams that has the gear to stay up and maybe even be better than a Purdue or a UConn. The problem is we haven't had. Look, I don't think there's anything they need to do, night to night to say, okay, here now they're as good as UConn, now they're as good as Purdue. We just have to see, maybe not 101 to 61, right? Like as RC kind of said to lead us off, like this was a one-off performance. This was a special day, and South Carolina played really badly, but something like that, right? Like the level of focus, the level of intensity, and obviously that starts on the road, as you said, Rob, right? Like to me, if Auburn plays consistently at this level, they're 100% as good as UConn, and it's 100% as good as Purdue.
I understand the people that have concerns with the Auburn resume, right? I think even with this win over South Carolina, correct me if I'm wrong, Sweeney, you're more in tune with the bubble stuff and the tournament stuff than I am, but I think they only still have that one quad one win. But if they have two now, according to
two, yeah, they have the Alabama win, and then they won on the road at Ole Miss.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. But what I will say is this: Ken Pom is just updated after this win tonight. And there's only one team in college basketball right now that is top 10 in both offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, according to our favorite math nerd, Ken Pomeroy. And I just keep coming back to that, man. Like, this is a team that goes 9 or 10 deep. They have enough guard play that I can trust it. They have guys that are absolute dogs all over the floor. Like, the idea that KD Johnson might be the second craziest dude on this roster. I don't think you want to mess with Chad Baker-Mazar. We talked about this on our text thread earlier. Randolph, this dude got in a scrap with like 4 different dudes on the South Carolina floor, got teched up, got brought to the bench, pulled out a Ziploc bag and started eating, I think it was fruit snacks. It was the Welch's fruit snacks out of a Ziploc bag. He wasn't even eating the gummy, the fruit snacks. He was eating it out of, he packed it himself. Like those JUCO dudes, you don't want to mess with those JUCO dudes. And
he's
Bruce
up 30, man. He ain't got no reason to be mad. He up 30. He won the game and the fight. It ain't nothing to worry about. He won the game and the fight. He like, shit, I'll be over there eating Pop-Tarts and everything else on the bench. I'm up 30. What you mad for? You should whoever. Yeah, that's what you say to your friend. That's what Coach Paris gonna say to his guys. Don't fight now. You should have fought before we went down 30.
That's a good point, man. Like the only thing I'll say is this: we talk a lot about this with North Carolina. It's been like a big theme for our show with Duke this year. Teams that don't have dogs, right? Teams that don't have those dudes that are going to just, they might not win the game, but they're going to make sure that no matter what happens, they win the fight. I think Auburn's got like 17 of those guys. And maybe they can donate one to Duke, and Duke can find a way to go win a national title or something like that. But I feel like that matters. Real quick, Sweeney, you got about 30 seconds here. South Carolina, how worried are you about this? Is this just a one-off, or did we kind of get something exposed here?
Look, I don't think they were ever the top 15 team that the polls said. I think, talent-wise, they're just not that group. They're really consistent. They play well together. I think they're going to find a way to compete near the top of the SEC because of the job that Lamont has done. But I think this exposed that they're not a true contender to win this conference.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. Lamont Paris has still done a great job. And thank you for watching the Field of 68. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, hit that like button, share this link with your friends, or check out the description for some other places that you can consume Field of 68 content.